Good morning. So, if you are scaling a company past 30 employees, 50 employees, 100, 200, even 500 employees, that's really a middle ground where you have a huge challenge. The challenge is you likely don't have a perfect, super high paid, super highly skilled leadership team. You definitely have some leadership, right? You probably have a COO and you probably have a CMO. You might have a partner or something that's helping with one aspect of the business, a CTO or a product person. But you begin to lose focus as you scale. Now, the reason this happens is because, when it's 10 people, when it's 5 people, it's easy to basically block out your focus time. You're probably head down, dialed in with product, head down, dialed in with marketing and sales, head down, dialed in with operations and finance. But what happens when you start to gain more of these employees, which is great, it's exciting, but at the same time, you lose the ability to focus very clearly. Now, when this happens, it becomes very challenging because you know as an entrepreneur that your most valuable resource is focus. And you also know that the number one trait of a successful founder, they've done studies on this. This is the science. It's that it's resource allocation. Their ability to allocate resources. And usually we think of this as money, but at a 100-person company or a 500-person company, it's not only just about allocating that small amount of cash flow that you have and that free profit, it's also about allocating your focus. Because at that stage, the company does run without you, right? If you have 100 employees, like you can leave for probably a month as long as you're running the business right and things will be okay. But it's not big enough to where you could leave for a year and nothing would really happen, right? And of course, you don't want to leave for a year. You probably don't even want to leave for a month. But the goal is to get the company autonomous so that you're running on all six P's if you plan to exit, or even if you don't plan to exit, you just want to be working on very high level strategy and dipping down into the weeds only when you want to, not when you have to. So the point is, as you get more employees, people try to steal more of your attention unknowingly. The world is extremely unproductive. This has probably been a problem already. It's not a new problem, but the more people that you add, including leadership team, the average workforce is not built for focus. That's why founders who do things right get very wealthy over time, is because they actually know how to allocate their focus. Even if it's just for 2 to 3 hours a day, they are dialed in, and you probably did that in order to get your company to where it is now. But the more people you add, the more it's harder to carve out that focus time. So how do you do this, and how do you make sure that it's encouraged for other people at the company to do the same thing? Well, I believe that ad hoc scheduling meetings is like the worst thing for a company. If you notice, when there is multiple people just throwing meetings on your calendar and they have free reign to do so, it creates a terrible environment for focus. Now, I've seen quite a few, schools of thought for this. There's obviously like Deep Work by Cal Newport, which is really interesting. It's a good book that talks about, that 4 hours of deep work per day. But I'm not even sure if you need that 4 hours. I think that 3 hour period, even 2 hours on really busy days, is enough to create real profitable, scalable growth that compounds over time. Now, when I'm talking about meetings, you need to let your team know, especially your leadership team, that people can't just schedule meetings with you for no reason without a clear agenda. You want to connect with your team, but you need to do it when it makes sense for you. As you know, in the mornings when you sit down at your desk with your cup of coffee, if you could have 4 hours with no meetings, that would be the secret to focus allocation, right? If you just have 4 hours every single day, nobody's putting shit on your calendar, it will help a lot. It will make you get back to that place when you were building your company where you were just focused, you were dialed in. All right. So if you can basically communicate that to your leadership team, that's a really important thing to do. Now, another piece of it isn't just the meetings, it's also the environment for focus, right? So if you're in an office, if you're working in an office and you're not remote, that can create a big challenge because people come to your desk, right? Or they come pop in your office. You need to shut that down. You need to create an environment in the company where, if everyone's working on the same time zone, don't let people meet in the morning unless it's with a customer or a client that needs to meet. All right. So and it can be different per role, right? If you have a project manager on the team, like their whole job is to meet with people. All right. So if it works for them, that's great. But I believe that everyone in the company should be working at least 2 to 3 hours in the morning without anything on their calendar. I never understood why people schedule meetings at like 8 a.m. or they schedule meetings, just randomly, like scattered throughout the day. If you have a meeting every 45 minutes randomly, you're never actually getting enough work done, or you're never having a block of time where you can focus or you can create something useful. How are you going to create a new product without like 20 plus hours of just strategy and no interruptions? It's impossible. There's no way that you're going to do it, and things are going to take way longer than they need to. And you as the founder or the CEO needs to be that example for everyone. If you start doing it, other people will follow. Like if you just start blocking off your calendar, blocking off your office and being like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., no meetings, nothing's happening unless it's with a really high paying client or potential client. And even then, it's like, the highest leverage thing that you can do probably isn't jumping on a call with a client at your level. It's probably getting someone else to do that and continuing to be focused, right? So other than like salespeople and other than, maybe project managers, there's nobody in the company that should be, scheduling meetings just randomly, constantly throughout the day. It's a mess. Really highly productive companies don't just sit in meetings for hours and hours unless it's like a really high strategy, high thought process meeting with your board. That's a little bit different, right? But those can happen in the afternoon. They don't have to happen in the beginning of the day when you're having your coffee and you're really excited to work. Okay, so that is super important. The meeting part is really important, and the environment is really important. When you're in your office, you need to make sure that's cut off. Like, don't let people just walk in your office and bother you with every problem. It's a fallacy that the CEO or the founder should be the person who puts out all the fires. You don't need to be that person, and you shouldn't encourage other people to be that person. You should encourage self-sufficiency in the company and helpfulness within like coworkers, not just always going right up to the manager or right up to the COO or right up to the CEO to fix problems that don't really need your involvement. Okay. So it starts with you and then it trickles down below. And the reason why focus allocation is so important is because the time that you spend on something doesn't matter as much as the intensity of focus that's put into it. So if you can intensely focus for 4 hours to create one video sales letter, for example, or one marketing video, that one marketing video can go on to be run as an ad, and it can generate you hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. And it just took 4 hours. But you wouldn't be able to create something that good, that was that effective, if you did it in 4 different increments in an hour each. The reason is because you're not in your flow state when you're creating those things. If it's scattered throughout the day or scattered throughout the week or the month, it's just like the musician who sits down and creates music for 4 hours straight. They might come out with a masterpiece because they're in the flow state, right? And they're feeling the music. It's the same way with work. If you're being creative and you're creating something, whether it's a product or as simple as like an SOP that's really helpful, you might increase employee productivity by like 20% by just creating that one operations SOP. But you wouldn't have been able to think through that and develop it if you're scattering that throughout 8 hours within a month. Versus if you get 8 hours over the course of just 2 days to work on it, uninterrupted, completely focused, headphones on, and coffee in hand, it's always going to be more effective to do that. So I hope that helps. I think if you can learn to not only allocate your resources and your money well, but allocate your focus and get that done in the morning. Basically, having bare minimum 2 hours a day, ideally like 4 hours a day of just deep, focused, productive work. And you encourage your leadership team and other people to do it as well, other than, sales and project management. That can be really helpful. Engineers can benefit from that. Services people can benefit from that. Copywriters and marketers can certainly benefit from it. And your operations, your COO can benefit a lot from it, because if they have 2 to 3 hours every morning just to create SOPs and just to give feedback and just to do performance reviews consistently, it'll build such a strong team. And you can still have all your meetings in the afternoon. It's just that you're preserving the most important resource, your focus. Hope that helps.